The silence in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council was absolute. Ambassador David Clark stood at the center of the massive chamber, surrounded by representatives from over 300 alien civilizations. The crystalline dome above stretched into darkness, its surface displaying the swirling nebulae of council space like a constant reminder of the vast empire that now judged humanity. Clark had prepared for this moment his entire diplomatic career, but nothing could have readied him for the sheer scale of the chamber. Towering beings from the Thex Dominion loomed over insectoid creatures from the swarm clusters, while energy-based life forms flickered between solid matter and pure light. Each species represented worlds beyond counting, technologies beyond imagination, and power beyond human comprehension. The chief arbiter, a being whose body seemed to be carved from living marble, raised one massive hand. Its voice echoed through translation devices in 100 different languages. Species designation human. You stand before this council accused of violating the fundamental laws of galactic warfare. Clark kept his expression neutral, though his heart hammered against his ribs. Behind him stood the other members of Earth's first diplomatic mission to council space. General Patricia Hayes, whose military bearing remained rigid, despite the impossible circumstances, and Dr. Michael Santos, Earth's leading materials scientist, whose research had brought them to this moment. The accusation, continued the chief arbiter, is that your species has developed materials that render the established order of galactic conflict obsolete. A ripple of movement passed through the assembled aliens. The Corvan War Marshal, whose 6 arms ended in natural weapons that could shred steel, leaned forward in his throne-like seat. His translator converted his clicking vocalizations into crisp, threatening words. Your primitive world has created something that makes our plasma weapons useless. This threatens the balance that has maintained peace for 10,000 years. Clark glanced at the holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. It showed footage from the recent border incident that had triggered this crisis. A human transport vessel, nothing more than a converted cargo hauler, had wandered into disputed space between the Corvan Empire and the Thex Dominion. When Corvan patrol ships had opened fire with their plasma batteries, expecting to vaporize the intruder instantly, something impossible had happened. The energy beams had simply stopped working. The plasma that should have melted through the ship's hull like a knife through paper had scattered harmlessly across its surface. The transport had escaped unharmed, leaving behind 2 of the galaxy's most powerful military forces staring at each other in confusion and growing fear. Honorable Council, Clark began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through the translation systems. Earth acknowledges that our materials technology has progressed beyond galactic norms. However, we contest the accusation that this violates any established laws. The chief arbiter's expression remained carved in stone. Elaborate. Clark activated his own holographic projector, a device that looked primitive compared to the Council's technology but served its purpose. The laws you reference specifically prohibit the development of weapons that destabilize galactic order. Our innovation is not a weapon, it is a defense. A new voice cut through the chamber like a blade. The speaker was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Ambassador Lyra of the Celestial Federation had been Earth's primary contact during the initial First Contact protocols, and her presence here meant the situation had escalated beyond simple border disputes. Ambassador Clark, she said, her melodic voice carrying notes of concern. You must understand the implications of what your species has created. For millennia, the balance of power in this galaxy has rested on the principle that energy weapons provide decisive advantage in space combat. Your meddle makes that principle meaningless. Dr. Santos stepped forward, his scientific mind clearly struggling with the political implications of his work. Council representatives, the materials in question were not developed for military purposes. They emerged from our industrial mining operations in the asteroid belt. The Swarm Queen's compound eyes focused on the human scientist with unsettling intensity. When she spoke, her voice buzzed like 1,000 insects in harmony. Explain the nature of these materials. Santos activated his datapad, projecting molecular diagrams into the chamber's holographic display. We call it metamaterial composite armor. The base consists of layered metallic alloys with specific crystalline structures that redirect energy, rather than absorbing it. The breakthrough came when we realized that instead of trying to resist plasma energy, We could convince it to go elsewhere. A murmur of voices in a dozen alien languages filled the chamber. The technological implications were becoming clear to species that had spent centuries perfecting energy-based warfare. General Hayes had remained silent throughout the exchange, but now she spoke with military directness. Council members, Earth's development of this technology was driven by necessity, not aggression. Our mining operations in deep space required protection from solar flares, cosmic radiation, and asteroid impacts. We needed materials that could handle extreme energy without failing. The Corvan War Marshal's natural weapons clicked against his armrests. Your explanations do not address the central concern. If energy weapons cannot penetrate your armor, then the foundation of space combat shifts entirely. Clark had been waiting for this moment. He reached into his diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small cube of dull gray metal, no larger than a dice. The simple act of producing the object caused visible tension throughout the chamber. Several alien representatives actually stepped back from their positions. "Honorable Council," Clark said, holding the cube so that every being in the chamber could see it. "This single piece of human manufacturing represents 6,000 years of metallurgical development. From our earliest bronze tools to our most advanced space-age alloys, humanity has always faced the same challenge: how to make things stronger." He placed the cube on the chamber's central platform, where it was immediately bathed in scanning beams from dozens of different technologies. The readings appeared on screens throughout the hall, showing molecular structures that seemed impossible to many of the assembled scientists. While other species developed energy weapons early in their technological progression, Clark continued, humanity remained locked in an arms race with itself. We developed better materials because we had to. Our wars, our industrial accidents, our hostile environment, everything pushed us to create metals that could survive anything. The chief arbiter studied the scanning results with growing amazement. These molecular structures should not be stable under normal physical laws. Dr. Santos smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. They're stable because they exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The energy that hits them doesn't disappear. It gets redirected into adjacent dimensional space where it dissipates harmlessly. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If humanity could manipulate matter at the dimensional level, their defensive capabilities were just the beginning. Ambassador Lyra's glowing skin had dimmed noticeably. What other applications does this technology possess? Clark met her gaze directly. That, Ambassador, depends entirely on whether the Galactic Council views humanity as a threat to be eliminated or a partner to be welcomed. The chamber fell silent once again, but this time the silence carried weight. Every alien representative understood that the balance of galactic power had just shifted in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. General Hayes stepped beside Clark, her military decorations catching the chamber's ambient light. "Council members, Earth requests formal recognition as a sovereign member of this body, with all rights and responsibilities that status entails." The chief arbiter's marble features seemed to shift slightly. "This request will require extensive deliberation." "Of course," Clark replied. "We'll wait for your decision. But while you deliberate, I suggest you consider one important fact, which is..." Clark gestured toward the cube of metal that still rested on the platform, its surface reflecting the lights of 300 civilizations. "Humanity didn't develop this technology in isolation. We developed it because our universe taught us that something someday would try to destroy us. The question you need to ask yourselves is, what else might be out there that we'll all need to survive together?" The chamber erupted in urgent conversations as the full implications of the human presence became clear. Earth had not just developed better armor. They had developed armor for threats the galaxy hadn't even imagined yet. And in the growing darkness between the stars, those threats were already beginning to move. The testing facility on Nexus Prime had never witnessed anything like this before. Admiral Kate Morgan stood behind reinforced barriers, watching as the galaxy's most devastating weapons prepared to fire upon a single sheet of human metal. The demonstration had been demanded by the Galactic Council after 3 days of heated debate following humanity's first appearance before the Assembly. Surrounding her were military observers from every major power in Council space. The Corvan War Marshal had brought his finest weapons specialists. The Thex Dominion's crystal-based technology officers hummed with barely contained energy. Even the peaceful healer caste from the sanctuary worlds had sent representatives, their concern evident in the way their tentacles writhed with nervous motion. The test chamber stretched the length of a city block, its walls lined with energy absorption panels designed to contain weapons that could crack moons. At the center, mounted on a simple rotating platform, sat a piece of human hull plating no thicker than a dinner plate. Dr. Michael Santos stood at the observation window, his scientific instruments recording every detail. Beside him, Colonel James Park maintained the stoic expression that had served him well during Earth's resource wars. But his eyes betrayed his tension. Beginning Test Sequence 1, announced the facility's computer in the Universal Translation Language. Corvin Plasma Cannon setting, Standard Combat Power. The War Marshal personally operated the controls, his 6 arms moving with predatory grace across the weapon's interface. The cannon that emerged from the chamber's floor was larger than most Earth vehicles, its barrel glowing with contained energy that could vaporize a city block. Standard combat power is sufficient to destroy any known armor in the galaxy, the War Marshal declared, his clicking voice carrying both pride and growing uncertainty. No material has ever withstood direct plasma impact. The weapon charged with a sound like reality tearing. Energy readings climbed beyond normal parameters as superheated matter reached temperatures that exceeded the core of most stars. Every alien observer leaned forward, expecting to witness the destruction of human arrogance. The plasma beam lanced across the chamber in a brilliant line of destruction. It struck the human metal plate dead center. Nothing happened. The energy spread across the surface, like water hitting glass, dissipating into the chamber's collection systems without leaving so much as a scorch mark. The metal hadn't even warmed. The silence that followed was deafening. The War Marshal's natural weapons began clicking rapidly against his armrests, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. "Impossible," whispered the Thex Dominion's crystal officer, her translucent form flickering with disbelief. "Increase power to maximum military specification." The second test used energy levels designed to penetrate battleship armor. The result was identical. The beam simply refused to affect the human material in any meaningful way. Test Sequence 3, the computer announced. Thex Quantum Disruptor Array. Dr. Santos turned to address the assembled observers, his voice carrying the patience of a teacher explaining complex concepts to students. "The key to understanding our technology lies in recognizing that we're not trying to resist your weapons. We're redirecting them." He activated a holographic display showing the molecular structure of their metamaterial composite. During Earth's corporate wars, our mining operations required materials that could handle extreme conditions. Solar flares, cosmic radiation, asteroid impacts, everything taught us that the best defense wasn't always the strongest armor. The quantum disruptor fired, its energy designed to unravel matter at the atomic level. The beam struck the human plate and seemed to bend around it, as if space itself were rejecting the weapon's effect. Colonel Park stepped forward, his military bearing commanding attention even among beings that dwarfed him physically. "Our metallurgy developed under constant threat. When enemies had plasma weapons, we built better armor. When they developed quantum disruptors, we created materials that existed in multiple dimensional states." The healer caste representative, a being whose tentacles could perform surgery at the molecular level, spoke with obvious concern. "You developed this through warfare alone?" "Through survival," Santos corrected. "When your species has no unified government and multiple factions competing for resources, innovation happens quickly. We couldn't afford to assume that any enemy would limit themselves to conventional weapons." The testing continued for hours. Weapons that had ended wars, technologies that had conquered star systems, and energy projectors that could ignite gas giants were all brought to bear against the simple sheet of human metal. Each test yielded the same result. The human material seemed to treat the galaxy's most fearsome weapons as minor inconveniences. Admiral Morgan watched the growing fear in the alien observers and felt a mixture of pride and concern. Earth's technology was proving its worth, but the political implications were becoming dangerous. The final test came from an unexpected source. The energy-based luminari, beings of pure coherent light, had remained silent throughout most of the demonstration. Now their representative stepped forward, its form blazing with power that made the chamber's light seem dim. "Our weapons are not technological," the luminari announced. its voice carrying harmonics that vibrated through multiple dimensions. We are energy. We project ourselves as weapons. The being raised what might have been arms and unleashed power that redefined the chamber's energy scales. Pure, coherent force, the building blocks of matter itself, struck the human metal with enough power to ignite a small star. The plate absorbed it all without even glowing. Analysis complete, Dr. Santos announced, studying his instruments. The metamaterial lattices are performing exactly as designed. They're not blocking the energy. They're convincing it to exist elsewhere. The War Marshal's clicking had become almost frantic. If energy weapons are obsolete, then kinetic weapons become dominant. Mass drivers, railguns, simple projectiles moving at high velocity. Colonel Park nodded grimly. Exactly. And humanity never stopped developing kinetic weapons. While you perfected energy projection, we kept making bigger guns and faster bullets. The implications rippled through the assembled observers like a physical wave. Species that had spent millennia perfecting energy warfare suddenly faced the possibility that their entire military doctrine had become obsolete overnight. The Thex Crystal Officer's form had dimmed to barely visible levels. Your species possesses both the ultimate defense against energy weapons and the most advanced kinetic weapons technology. We possess what survival demanded, Admiral Morgan replied. The question now is what the galaxy intends to do with this information. The luminary's brilliant form flickered with what might have been concern. There are implications beyond military applications. If your materials can manipulate energy at this level, what other capabilities might they possess? Dr. Santos hesitated before answering. Our research has revealed some interesting secondary effects. The same principles that redirect energy can be applied to gravity, electromagnetic fields, even temporal distortions on a small scale. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of human technology became apparent. They hadn't just developed better armor. They had stumbled onto fundamental principles that could reshape galactic civilization. The War Marshal was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. How many humans possess this knowledge? Every human colony has the basic manufacturing capability, Colonel Park answered honestly. 14 worlds, 400 billion people, all with access to metamaterial production. The weight of numbers settled over the assembly like a blanket of lead. Humanity wasn't just technologically advanced. They were numerous enough to project that advantage across space. Admiral Morgan stepped forward, sensing the moment that would define Earth's future relationship with the galaxy. Council observers, Earth hereby offers to share our defensive technologies with any species willing to contribute to mutual security arrangements. And if we refuse? The Thex officer asked. Morgan's smile carried no warmth. Then you'll face whatever threats emerge from beyond the galaxy with energy weapons that can't penetrate our defenses, while we face those same threats with technology designed to survive anything the universe can produce. The testing facility fell quiet, except for the hum of instruments recording the end of an era. The age of energy weapon supremacy was over. The question that remained was whether the galaxy would adapt to this new reality or fragment under the weight of obsolete assumptions. In the depths of space beyond the galactic rim, ancient sensors detected the energy signatures of the weapons tests. Massive constructs that had been drifting between galaxies for eons began to alter course, drawn by the promise of a civilization that had developed technologies worth acquiring. The real test was yet to come. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the shadow chambers beneath Nexus Prime, where the most critical decisions in galactic history had been made. Ambassador David Clark found himself in the unprecedented position of being simultaneously the most important person in the galaxy and completely excluded from determining his species' fate. From the human delegation's secure booth, Clark watched as alliances that had endured for millennia crumbled in real time. The formal diplomatic protocols had been abandoned as representatives huddled in heated discussions, their survival instincts overriding centuries of careful political balance. The Corvan War Marshal slammed his massive fists against the central podium, causing the smaller species representatives to scatter. The solution is clear. This threat must be eliminated before it spreads beyond the Sol system. And accomplish what exactly? Challenged Prime Admiral Vex of the Outer Rim Coalition, her cybernetic implants glowing with agitation. Start a war with the only species that has made our weapons useless? Have you calculated what their offensive capabilities might be? The Swarm Queen's compound eyes reflected the chamber's emergency lighting as she spoke with cold logic. Analysis indicates their technology extends beyond defensive applications. If they can manipulate energy at the demonstrated level, their offensive potential could be limitless. Clark activated his booth's communication system, the sound cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Honored Council, if I may address your concerns directly." The chamber fell silent with the abrupt quality of held breath. The Chief Arbiter's stone features turned toward the human delegation. "The human ambassador will be heard." Clark stood, his diplomatic training evident in his calm demeanor despite the circumstances. "You're asking the wrong questions. You want to know if humanity threatens you, but you should be asking what threatens humanity. In the 3 centuries since we achieved spaceflight, how many species has this council encountered that developed their technology in complete isolation?" Clark's voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. How many faced constant existential threats that forced them to innovate or die? Dr. Michael Santos joined Clark in the booth, his scientific instruments displaying data on the chamber's central screens. "Our metallurgy didn't emerge from peaceful research, council members. Every advancement came because someone was shooting at us with something we couldn't survive." Prime Admiral Vex leaned forward, her mechanical eye focusing with telescopic precision. "What are you suggesting?" "That humanity's defensive technology exists because we unconsciously prepared for threats beyond anything in current galactic experience." Clark activated a holographic display showing star charts from Earth's deep space monitoring stations. "For 50 years, our astronomical surveys have detected anomalies moving in the void between galaxies." The chamber erupted in voices speaking dozens of languages simultaneously. The Chief Arbiter's authoritative tone cut through the noise. "You possess evidence of extragalactic threats?" General Patricia Hayes uploaded classified data to the chamber's central systems. 18 months ago, our Titan Observatory detected this." The holographic display shifted to show something that defied easy comprehension. A massive artificial structure, larger than most moons, moved through the dark space between the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies. Its surface crawled with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and weapon systems that dwarfed anything in Council records. "Deep space analysis suggests it's not alone," Hayes continued, her military bearing unchanged, despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. "Long-range sensors indicate at least 30 similar constructs, all following convergent trajectories toward our galaxy." The silence that followed was profound enough to hear the chamber's life support systems cycling. When the Swarm Queen finally spoke, her voice carried a note that might have been fear. "Estimated time until arrival?" Dr. Santos consulted his data displays. "Conservative projections indicate 60 years. Aggressive estimates suggest 30. The Thex Dominion's crystal representative flickered with rapid calculations. "If energy weapons are ineffective against human defenses, and these constructs likely employ similar energy-based systems as their primary armament, then humanity accidentally developed the perfect counter to an enemy we didn't know existed," Clark finished. "The question now is whether the galaxy wants to benefit from our paranoia, or waste time fighting among ourselves while the real threat approaches." War Marshal Corvin sat heavily in his command throne, his earlier aggression replaced by something approaching humility. "You knew of this threat when you appeared before the Council?" "We suspected something was coming," Hayes admitted. "Our deep space defenses, our mining operations in hostile environments, our materials research. Everything we developed was based on the assumption that eventually, something bigger and more dangerous would find us." The Luminari representative, its energy form flickering with rapid thought processes, spoke with harmonics that resonated through multiple dimensions. "Your species developed defenses against theoretical maximum threats. We developed defenses against the worst-case scenarios our imagination could produce," Santos corrected. "When you spend 6,000 years fighting yourselves, you learn to assume that someone else out there is probably better at war than you are." Prime Admiral Vex studied the tactical projections with professional interest. "And kinetic weapons remain effective against these constructs?" Clark nodded toward the holographic display showing the alien structures. "Based on their energy signatures and construction materials, conventional mass drivers should be capable of inflicting damage. Our weapons technology developed specifically to counter heavily armored targets." The Chief Arbiter's form pulsed with rapid calculations. You are proposing an alliance against a threat that may not arrive for decades? We're proposing an alliance against a threat that definitely will arrive, Hayes corrected. The question is whether we prepare for it together or face it separately. The chamber fell into urgent discussions as representatives consulted with their home governments through quantum communication arrays. The political landscape of the galaxy was reshaping itself in real time, forced to adapt to realities that challenged every assumption about galactic security. The healer caste representative, whose tentacles had been writhing with nervous energy throughout the session, finally spoke. What guarantee can humanity provide that this alliance would not simply facilitate human dominance? Clark had been expecting this question since the session began. The same guarantee you can provide that your species won't attempt to eliminate us once the external threat is neutralized. None. What we can offer is mutual dependence through shared technology. He activated another display showing preliminary designs for hybrid vessels, human defensive materials combined with alien energy systems, Corvin plasma weapons integrated with our kinetic platforms, Thex quantum manipulation enhanced by our dimensional lattices. Dr. Santos stepped forward, his enthusiasm for the scientific possibilities overriding his diplomatic caution. The technological synthesis possibilities are extraordinary. Your energy manipulation capabilities could enhance our materials beyond anything we've achieved independently. Our dimensional technology could revolutionize your quantum applications. The War Marshal's clicking had shifted from agitation to what might have been calculation. Joint research facilities, shared manufacturing capabilities, integrated defense grids, exactly, Clark confirmed. Not human technology imposed on alien systems, but hybrid innovations that neither side could develop alone. Prime Admiral Vex studied the projection of the approaching constructs. And if these threats prove less formidable than anticipated? General Hayes allowed herself a grim smile. Then we'll have the most advanced military technology in galactic history and the diplomatic framework to ensure it's never used against each other. The Swarm Queens. Compound eyes focused on the human delegation with new assessment. This proposal requires significant trust between species that were considering warfare hours ago. Trust or shared necessity, Clark replied. The constructs won't care about our individual capabilities. They'll only evaluate what we can accomplish together. The chief arbiter raised one massive hand, calling for attention. The council will recess for emergency consultations. Representatives will reconvene in 6 hours to vote on the human proposal. As the alien delegates filed out in various states of concern and calculation, Clark turned to his team. Think they'll accept? Dr. Santos watched the last of the representatives disappear through the chamber's exits. They'll accept because the alternative is facing the unknown with obsolete weapons and obsolete assumptions. General Hayes studied the tactical data still displayed in the chamber's holograms. David, what we've just offered them isn't just an alliance. We've offered to make human survival dependent on galactic cooperation. Clark nodded, understanding the full implications of what they had set in motion, and made galactic survival dependent on human innovation. When those constructs arrive, we'll either stand together or fall separately. In the depths of space, the first of the ancient machines detected the energy signatures from the Council's weapons tests. The orbital shipyards around Earth had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Commander Lisa Park stood in the observation deck of Unity Station, watching as human and alien workers collaborated on technologies that neither species could have imagined alone. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council's emergency vote, and the results of that cooperation were beginning to take shape. Below her, the first hybrid warship neared completion. The vessel's hull gleamed with human metamaterial composites while its weapon systems integrated the finest energy technologies from across the galaxy. The sight should have filled her with pride, but Park's enhanced vision caught details that troubled her. They still don't trust us, observed Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's new Chief Technology Integration Officer. She had joined Park at the viewport, her datapad displaying construction reports from 12 different shipyards. Park nodded, her command training making her naturally observant of group dynamics. Look at the work patterns. Human teams work efficiently, but every alien crew double-checks our calculations. The Corvin engineers maintain separate communication channels. Even the cooperative healer caste keeps backup systems for every human innovation. Can you blame them? Vasquez asked. 6 months ago, we made their entire military doctrine obsolete overnight. They're smart enough to work with us, but they're also smart enough to be terrified of us. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Kate Morgan, accompanied by War Marshal Corvin and Strategic Coordinator Yalthus of the Swarm Collective. The unlikely trio had become the operational leadership of what was being called the Unity Alliance, though the name carried implications that made many species uncomfortable. "Status report," Morgan requested, her tone carrying the weight of someone managing the largest military construction project in galactic history. Park activated the station's holographic display, showing construction progress across the integrated shipyards. 83 hybrid vessels completed, another 170 in various stages of construction. The Corvin heavy weapon integration is exceeding all performance projections. War Marshal Corvin studied the display with professional interest, though Park noticed how his 6 arms remained positioned near his sidearms. "And the human modifications? Our metamaterial plating is now standard across all Alliance vessels," Vasquez reported. "We've also begun implementing kinetic weapon systems, mass drivers, railguns, and what we're calling adaptive projectiles. Kinetic rounds that can modify their trajectory during flight." Strategic Coordinator Yalthus's compound eyes reflected the construction data with mechanical precision. "Integration proceeds at acceptable efficiency levels. However, concerns exist regarding technological dependencies." Admiral Morgan turned to face the alien officers directly. "Speak plainly, Yalthus. The Swarm Collective calculates that current alliance structure creates asymmetric advantages for humanity. Other species contribute energy weapons rendered obsolete by human defenses. Humans contribute defenses that cannot be replicated without human materials science." The observation deck fell silent as the underlying tension finally surfaced. Park had been expecting this conversation since the alliance began. "You're concerned that we're making you dependent on us," Morgan said directly. War Marshal Corvin's scales darkened with agitation. "The concern possesses merit, Admiral. Your species controls the only effective defense against approaching threats. Should humanity choose to withdraw cooperation, you'd be defenseless," Park finished. "And you think we planned this manipulation?" Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her voice carrying the patience of someone who had explained these concepts repeatedly. "War Marshal, with respect, you're analyzing this like a politician when you need to think like an engineer. Yes, our technology creates dependencies, but not the kind you fear." She activated a secondary display showing the molecular structure of their metamaterial composites. "Look at this data more carefully. The base materials aren't exotic. They're variations of elements found in every star system. What makes them special is the fabrication process, the layering techniques, the quantum alignment protocols." Strategic Coordinator Yalthus focused her compound eyes on the data with intense concentration. "These processes can be taught to other species. Not just taught, improved," Vasquez continued enthusiastically. "The Corvin plasma technologies are actually enhancing our energy routing capabilities beyond original specifications. The Swarm Collective's quantum manipulation techniques are allowing us to create materials we never conceived possible." Admiral Morgan moved to stand beside the holographic display. "What Dr. Vasquez means is that human technology isn't the final solution, it's the foundation. We're not trying to create dependencies. We're building technological synthesis stronger than any single species could achieve." War Marshal Corvin remained skeptical. "And if human interests diverge from Alliance objectives?" Commander Park smiled at the question. "War Marshal, have you studied human military history since joining this alliance?" "Extensively, as required by my position." "Then you understand that humanity's greatest strength has never been individual superiority. It's been our ability to learn from everyone we encounter and integrate those lessons into something better." Park gestured toward the shipyard construction below. "Every major human military advancement came from adapting innovations developed by others. We learned metallurgy from ancient civilizations, explosives from medieval chemists, rocketry from international cooperation, and nuclear physics from global scientific collaboration." Morgan added, "Human military doctrine has always been, find the best ideas, improve them, and share them with your allies." Dr. Vasquez brought up new displays showing projected fleet compositions. "The ships we're building aren't human vessels with alien weapons attached. They're hybrid designs that couldn't exist without complete technological integration from all Alliance species. We're not creating dependence, we're creating mutual indispensability. Strategic Coordinator Yalthes studied the data for several minutes before responding. The Swarm Collective finds this analysis acceptable, provided safeguards ensure technological sharing remains mutual. War Marshal Corvin's scales gradually return to normal coloration. The Corvin Empire concurs. However, we request expanded access to human fabrication facilities. Admiral Morgan nodded. Already in progress. We're establishing joint research stations in every Alliance system. The goal isn't to make you dependent on human technology. It's to make human technology dependent on Alliance innovation. Park looked out at the bustling shipyard, watching human and alien workers collaborating on projects that neither species could have accomplished alone. The approaching constructs won't evaluate our individual capabilities. They'll only measure what we can accomplish together. Dr. Vasquez smiled as she observed a successful integration test between human metamaterials and Corvin energy systems, and what we're accomplishing together is becoming quite impressive. Admiral Morgan's expression remained serious as she consulted tactical projections on her personal display. It'll need to be impressive. Our long-range sensors have detected acceleration patterns from the approaching constructs. Park felt her stomach tighten. They're moving faster? Much faster. Original estimates suggested 60 years until contact. Current projections indicate 20 years, possibly less. The observation deck fell silent as the implications became clear. The technological integration that had seemed like a long-term project suddenly became an urgent race against time. War Marshal Corvin's military bearings straightened. What changes to construction priorities does this require? We accelerate everything, Morgan decided. Double shifts on all projects. Expanded resource allocation, and we begin training integrated crews immediately, instead of waiting for the fleet to reach full strength. Strategic Coordinator Yalthes's clicking patterns indicated rapid calculation. The Swarm Collective can provide additional manufacturing capacity. Our hive structures are ideal for mass production. Dr. Vasquez was already updating construction schedules on her data pad. The Corvin energy systems are actually easier to integrate than we expected. We can streamline the fabrication process significantly. Park studied the tactical projections showing the approaching threats. Admiral, there's something else we need to consider. If these constructs are accelerating, they might be responding to our activities here. Morgan's expression grew grim. You think they know about the Alliance? I think they know about the technology demonstrations. Energy signatures from our weapons tests would be detectable across interstellar distances. The implications settled over the group like a heavy blanket. The constructs weren't just approaching randomly. They were coming because they had detected something worth investigating. War Marshal Corvin's voice carried new respect when he spoke. Then they will discover that this galaxy is not the easy conquest they anticipated. Admiral, Morgan looked out at the shipyards where dozens of species worked, together on technologies that promised to redefine warfare itself. Let's make sure that lesson is as educational as possible. Far beyond the galactic rim, the ancient constructs continued their acceleration toward the source of the first extragalactic construct entered the Milky Way's outer rim on a Tuesday morning, ship time. Admiral Kate Morgan stood in the command center of the Alliance flagship Prometheus, watching as long-range sensors painted a picture that exceeded their most pessimistic projections. The construct wasn't just massive. It was a geometric impossibility that seemed to contain more internal space than its exterior. Dimensions should allow sensor. Analysis confirms our worst fears, reported Captain Lisa Park, who had become the Alliance's chief tactical coordinator during the years of preparation. The construct is actively scanning star systems as it passes. Not passive observation, it's cataloging military installations, population centers, and industrial capacity. War Marshal Corvin stood at his integrated command station, his 6 arms moving across controls that blended human and alien technologies. Distance to construct? 15 light-years in closing. At current velocity, it will reach the outer colonies in 8 months. Park's voice remained steady despite the implications. But Admiral, long-range sensors detect additional contacts. The main display shifted to show the space behind the first construct. Dozens of similar objects followed in its wake, each one the size of a small moon and bristling with weapon systems that defied easy classification. Strategic Coordinator Yalthes's compound eyes processed the tactical data with mechanical efficiency. Preliminary count indicates 43 constructs. Each unit possesses energy output equivalent to a star system's total power generation. Dr. Elena Vasquez studied the energy signatures from her science station, her face pale with growing comprehension. It's worse than our projection suggested. Look at these power readings. They're not just using directed energy weapons. These constructs are manipulating space-time itself. Gravity wells, temporal distortions, dimensional fractures. Admiral Morgan absorbed the information with the calm that had made her Earth's choice for Alliance command. Capabilities assessment of our hybrid fleet?
Captain Park brought up the Alliance battle order on the central display.
312 operational vessels, each equipped with human metamaterial armor and integrated alien weapon systems. Our kinetic weapons should be effective against their hulls, assuming we can survive long enough to use them. Assumptions kill fleets, War Marshal Corvin growled, his scales darkening to combat coloration. We require certainty. Then we test our capabilities, Morgan decided without hesitation. Strategic Coordinator Yalthes, how quickly can we position a single hybrid vessel for intercept? The insectoid officer's compound eyes reflected rapid calculations. The destroyer Defiance is currently conducting integration trials in the Centauri system. It can reach intercept position in 96 hours. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her displays with obvious alarm.
Kate, you're not seriously considering engaging one of those constructs with a single ship?
Not engaging, testing, Morgan clarified. In 96 hours, we're going to discover whether 20 years of Alliance cooperation and 6,000 years of human paranoia are enough to face the unknown. The next 4 days passed in a blur of final preparations. The Defiance, under the command of Captain Torres, became the focus of every hope and fear in Alliance space. Its hull represented the pinnacle of metamaterial technology, while its weapon systems embodied the finest achievements of multi-species military cooperation, range to construct, 800,000 kilometers and closing, reported the Defiance's sensor officer. Target is significantly larger than our models predicted. Captain Torres studied the tactical display where the extragalactic construct loomed like a mechanical planet. Weapon status? Corvin plasma cannons charged and ready. Human railguns loaded with metamaterial penetrator rounds. Swarm collective energy routing systems standing by to redirect incoming fire. Armor status? Human metamaterial plating holding steady. All Alliance defensive systems showing green across the board. Torres opened a quantum communication channel to Admiral Morgan aboard the Prometheus. Alliance Command, this is Defiance. Beginning test engagement in 60 seconds. Morgan's voice carried across the quantum array with crystal clarity. Remember, Captain, we're not trying to destroy this thing. We're learning what it takes to hurt it. The construct responded to their approach by rotating its massive bulk, bringing weapon systems to bear that dwarfed anything in Alliance records. Energy readings spiked beyond theoretical maximums as the extragalactic vessel prepared to demonstrate its capabilities. Incoming energy discharge, the sensor officer called out. Power levels exceeding stellar output. This is more energy than our home star generates. The beam that struck the Defiance lit up every sensor in the Alliance fleet. For a terrifying moment, Torres was certain they would be vaporized instantly. Then the metamaterial armor performed exactly as designed. The energy scattered, redirected, and dissipated harmlessly into space. Direct hit, minimal damage, Torres reported, his voice carrying amazement despite his training. Hull armor is holding, returning fire with kinetic rounds. The Defiance's railgun spoke with the voice of accelerated metal, hurling penetrator rounds at significant fractions of light speed. The projectiles struck the construct's hull and achieved something no Alliance weapon had. Accomplished in living memory, they damaged an apparently invincible enemy. Sections of alien armor buckled and cracked under the kinetic impact. The construct's smooth surface now bore visible scars where human weapons had found their mark. Analysis confirms hull penetration. Dr. Vasquez called out over the communication link. Kinetic weapons are effective against their construction materials, but the construct was learning with frightening speed. Its next energy discharge came not as a directed beam, but as a wave that seemed to bend reality around the Defiance. The human vessel's armor held, but stress indicators flashed warning colors across every display. That was a gravitational weapon, Torres reported grimly. They're adapting to our defenses faster than anticipated. Strategic Coordinator Yalthes's voice carried urgent calculations. The construct is deploying secondary weapon systems. Configuration unknown. What emerged from the alien vessel's hull challenged basic understanding of physics, geometric shapes that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, firing projectiles that traveled through folded space without crossing the distance between. One such projectile struck the Defiance, and for a moment the ship existed in several locations at once. Only the Swarm Collective's quantum stabilizers prevented the vessel from being torn apart by dimensional stress. All stop, Torres ordered. We've learned what we came to learn. Alliance Command, recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. As the Defiance retreated, Admiral Morgan studied the tactical data with growing understanding. Analysis complete. Captain Park compiled the engagement report with military precision. Human metamaterial armor is effective against their energy weapons, but they adapt quickly. Our kinetic weapons can damage their hulls, but they possess secondary systems we don't understand. However, our quantum stabilizers can counter their exotic attacks. War Marshal Corvin's scales had shifted to the deep purple that indicated intense concentration. Assessment: we can hurt them individually, but can we stop them collectively? Morgan looked at the assembled Alliance fleet. 312 vessels representing the combined military might of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. Against 43 constructs that each outmassed most asteroids. Individually, no together? She activated the fleet-wide communication system. All Alliance vessels, this is Admiral Morgan. Today we learned that humanity's metal is strong enough to protect us, and our weapons are sharp enough to cut them. More importantly, we learned that when dozens of civilizations combine their knowledge, even the impossible becomes manageable. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her analysis of the construct's behavioral patterns. Kate, there's something else. The way it adapted to our attacks, it's not just learning from us. It's learning about us. These aren't just weapon platforms, meaning these constructs aren't here to destroy indiscriminately. They're here to evaluate and acquire. What they learned today is that this galaxy possesses something they didn't expect. Admiral Morgan nodded slowly as the implications became clear. Then let's make sure the next lesson we teach them is even more memorable. Throughout Alliance space, construction accelerated on the orbital forges where human metallurgy and alien innovation continued creating something the galaxy had never seen before. Not just ships, but hope itself, forged in the crucible of species that had learned to work together when extinction was the alternative. The construct continued its measured progress through the outer rim, but now it carried with it the knowledge that this galaxy contained something unprecedented, a species that had spent millennia preparing for the unthinkable, and allies willing to stand with them when the unthinkable finally arrived. The real war was about to begin, and for the first time in eons the outcome was uncertain.